How are the NBA Finals so far? How are the Stanley Cup Finals so far? How are the MLB rankings so far? How were the UEFA Nations League Final? Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Ball Talk with Chanel. If you're here, my name is Chanel. I am your podcast host, and this podcast will keep you updated on everything that's going on with sports around the world, whether it is the NFL and MLB or internationally, such as the English Premier League or La Liga. Now, this episode will be split into 4 sections. The first section, we will be looking at the NBA. Like I mentioned before, we are in the middle of the NBA Finals. So we will be recapping what happened with the NBA Finals so far, as well as talk about the latest trade talks and rumors. Next, we will be talking about the NHL. We are in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals, so we will be recapping everything that has happened so far, as well as go over some of the season awards that these players have won. Then we're going to be talking about Major League Baseball. We are in the middle of the regular season, so we will be talking about season rankings as of right now, as well as the latest injury report on 2 big players. Then finally, we will be going over the UEFA Nations League. Now, the final was last Sunday, and it was nothing less than exciting. So we will be recapping the semifinals, the match for third place, the finals, and of course, every final thought. So, with all that being said, let's get on with the episode. So, first section, let's talk about the NBA. Now, like I've mentioned before, we are in the middle of the NBA Finals, so let's recap everything that has happened so far. So, Game 2 was last Sunday, and look, the Thunder came in with an absolute purpose. There were a total of 4 lead changes in the first quarter alone, and then the Thunder led for the rest of the game. The Pacers were trying so hard to make a comeback, but ultimately they were not able to pull off the win. The Thunder ended up winning 123-107 and thereby tied the series at 1 apiece. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came up huge for the Thunder, ending the game with 34 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists. Jalen Williams also had a good game for the Thunder, ending the game with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. For the Pacers, guard Tyrese Haliburton had a solid game, ending the game with 17 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists. Pascal Siakam also had a solid game for the Pacers, ending the game with 15 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then we get to Game 3, and the Pacers came in with a revenge. Now, the Thunder was leading for the majority of the game by as much as 10 points. But then in the fourth quarter, the Pacers end up making a comeback. They end up taking the lead, and they end up winning 116-107 to lead the series 2-1. Guard Tyrese Haliburton had such a good game, ending the game with 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists. Pascal Siakam also had a good game for the Pacers, ending the game with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then looking at the Thunder, Jalen Williams also had a good game, ending the game with 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. And then, of course, we have to talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who ended the game with a solid 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then we get to Game 4. And like I mentioned before, with the Thunder leading for the majority of the game and the Pacers coming back, this time, the Pacers were leading by as much as 7 points, and then the Thunder made a comeback in the fourth quarter. They ended up winning the game 111-104 to tie the series at 2 apiece. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came up huge for the team, ending the game with 35 points and 3 rebounds. Jalen Williams also had a great game for the Thunder, ending the game with 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. And then for the Pacers, Tyrese Haliburton had a solid game, ending the game with 18 points, 2 rebounds, and 7 assists. And Pascal Siakam also came through for this team, dropping 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. So, I've already talked about who I think is going to win and why, so I am not going to repeat it in this episode. If you want to see what my prediction is, go and check out last week's episode. But what I will say, and this is something that quite a few people have tweeted and has posted on social media, which is what I agree with, is that this is the first time in a long time that we have had a good finals series. And what I mean by this is that both teams are evenly balanced. If you want proof of that, check out last week's episode where I talked about the stats between the two teams and also the experience or lack thereof. So, to further prove my point, let's look at the last 3 NBA Finals series. So, last year we had the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. Now, everyone knew fundamentally that the Boston Celtics were going to win. There was just about no debate about who was going to win. The only thing that was a debate, quite frankly, was and how many games were the Celtics going to win. But there was no argument that the Celtics were going to win or whether they were going to lose. None of that. Everyone knew that the Celtics were the stronger team. And the year before that, we had the Denver Nuggets versus the Miami Heat. Now, of course, we all know how playoff Jimmy plays. We know about Bam Adebayo, how good of a player he is, how good of a player Tyler Hero is. But fundamentally, the Denver Nuggets in 2023 pretty much could not be stopped. They were a very strong team that going up against the Miami Heat was an imbalance. Again, everyone knew that the Denver Nuggets were going to win. It was just a debate of in how many games are they going to win. But there was no question about it that the Nuggets were going to win. And then the year before that were the Golden State Warriors versus the Boston Celtics. Now, the Celtics were, of course, a good team. No one's going to argue that. But listen, what set Golden State apart from Boston was experience. The Celtics have never made it to the finals with the core that they had, with your Jason Tatums, your Jaylen Browns, your Derek Whites. They had never experienced the NBA Finals atmosphere, the NBA Finals pressure. Golden State at that point, with Steph, with Draymond, with Clay, they have all been to the finals many times. So that experience in and of itself told pretty much everyone that Golden State was going to win. It was just, again, a matter of in how many games are they going to win. But pretty much everyone fundamentally knew that Golden State was going to win. Now, let's compare those 3 finals to this year's finals. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder, which their core squad, right, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, etc., have never been to the NBA Finals. And then you have the Indiana Pacers with their core squad, right, your Tyrese Halliburton, your Pascal Siakam, your Andrew Nembhard, etc. They have never been to the NBA Finals. So now you have 2 teams that are very good, that are battling in the NBA Finals in an atmosphere they have never been in before. So this is what we are seeing. We are seeing 2 teams never before in NBA Finals pressure to see who exactly will be able to triumph the pressure and the atmosphere. And now I think a lot of people really underestimate how exciting this finals really is. Now, I understand we don't see players such as LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, etc., right? We don't see those players that we've grown up, that we love, right? This and the third. But don't you think it's a little refreshing now that we don't see those players? That it's not the same teams going to the finals? Like, think about from 2015 to 2018, it was Golden State Warriors versus Cleveland Cavaliers. Every year. It was 4 straight finals of Golden State versus Cleveland. And what did people argue back then? Oh my gosh, this series is boring. Oh my gosh, why are they battling again? Oh my gosh, why can't we have new teams? So now we have new teams and people are upset. Now I understand, like I said, that you don't see your superstars in, but it is nice to see the younger players, the next generation that are going to be battling out in the NBA Finals. So I think people truly are underestimating and really not appreciating how good of a finals this series actually is. Now, moving away from the NBA Finals talk, let's talk about the latest trade talks and rumors that have been going around. And with this, I want to focus on 2 players. The first player I want to focus on is Phoenix Suns player Kevin Durant. Now, the Suns have mentioned and have expressed that they want to trade KD before the NBA draft, which is later on this month. And now reports have also said that KD's preferred destinations are one of these three teams: the Houston Rockets, the San Antonio Spurs, or the Miami Heat. Now, I personally think that of those three teams, the team that would be the best fit for Kevin Durant and have the best chance of landing Kevin Durant is the Miami Heat. And here's why. So let's start first with the Houston Rockets. Now, they did have a really good season this past season, and they were a first-round playoff exit after losing to Golden State. Now, they do have a really good young core. You have Jabari Smith Jr., you have Jalen Green, you have Alperen Sengun, etc. You have a really good young team, but what you saw, especially in that first round of the playoffs, is immaturity, lack of development, and something that ultimately this just improves with age and experience. Something that you can see here that the Houston Rockets right now have the potential to really be a good, solid team in the future. So, with trying to acquire Kevin Durant, I'm thinking more about how much would the Houston Rockets have to give up to get Kevin Durant. Now, of course, you would have to give up some players, whether it's Jalen Green or Jabari Smith or one of those players. You'd have to give up picks. You would have to give up so much to get Kevin Durant, who is ultimately going to sign a 1 or 2 year deal. And so, is it worth it? Is it worth breaking up this young core to get Kevin Durant, who is in his mid-30s, who's going to sign a 1 or 2 year deal and potentially try to move on to the next team? I personally don't think so. I hope the Rockets feel the same way. I think that the Houston Rockets have the lowest chance of the three to be able to sign Kevin Durant. Now let's talk about San Antonio. Now, I do think San Antonio has a little bit of a better chance of signing Kevin Durant than the Houston Rockets, but still, I kind of doubt it. Now, the San Antonio Spurs did struggle this past season, even after having players such as De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, and Stephon Castle. And so you would think that they would have a little bit of a better chance, but ultimately, this past season, just something didn't click. Now, also what's important to note is that this upcoming draft, the San Antonio Spurs have 2 top 15 picks. They have the number 2 overall pick, and they have the number 14 overall pick. So, again, like I mentioned before with the Houston Rockets, the Spurs would have to give up, more than likely, one of those picks, as well as future first-round picks, as well as some other players, some key players at that, to get Kevin Durant. So again, I ask, is it worth giving all of that up when you can use the players that you have and the picks that you have to build up a young core team that could really make a difference, maybe not next season necessarily, but in the next few years, to give that all up for, again, Kevin Durant, who's going to want to sign a 1 or 2 year deal? I think, me personally, it's just not worth it. So I don't think that the San Antonio Spurs are going to sign Kevin Durant. Now, like I mentioned before, I think of the 3 teams that KD wants to go to, I think the Miami Heat has the best chance of landing him. Now, the Miami Heat did make it to the playoffs this year, and listen, they got dusted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. They didn't just lose. They got dusted. It was probably one of the worst playoff series I think I have ever seen in my entire life. It was really, really bad and quite embarrassing for the Heat. It almost gave the impression of, you're not supposed to be here, and let's just prove it to you. So something that the Miami Heat really, really needs are scorers. They run their scoring around Tyler Hero. They run their scoring around Bam Adebayo in the post. Now, I think adding Kevin Durant adds in another scoring option. And I also think, too, that on top of that, he gives you defense, right? He's another defensive player that can drop 30 points if he needs to. So I think of the three teams that the Miami Heat would be the best option for him. And it's okay if he's there for 1 or 2 years, honestly, because look, the team is young, but not quite that young. So it's not like you're giving up a huge young core. And maybe they'll be able to get it to where they don't have to trade Tyler Hero or Bam. And they'll be able to still acquire Kevin Durant. So again, this, of course, premises and assumes that the Heat are not trading Tyler Hero and Bam. I think that the KD, Bam, and Hero trio would make a serious difference. Now, speaking of the Heat, the second player I want to focus on for trade talks is Russell Westbrook. Now, Russell Westbrook has declined his option with the Denver Nuggets and therefore will be a free agent. So the question is, what team will Russell Westbrook sign with? And I think that it should be the Miami Heat as well. And here's why. I think that the Heat desperately needs a point guard. I think Davion Mitchell right now is just not doing the job. And I think he's one of those players that can come off the bench. If you put Russell Westbrook in that starting lineup and you have Davion Mitchell come in to substitute for Westbrook when Westbrook needs a break, I think that is just going to be the best case scenario. And so if you have, hypothetically, you have Russell Westbrook, Tyler Hero, KD, and Bam, I think that would make a serious run in the East, at least. I think that would be a great chance where Russell Westbrook would still be the man. He would still have that starting position. He would still be able to do everything that we're so used to seeing him doing. And on top of that, he really doesn't need to worry about scoring. People have been talking about how Russell Westbrook can't shoot and everything else, but guess what? If you're on a team like that, you don't need to shoot. You can still drive to the basket. You can still, do what you need to do and then kick it out to a Tyler Hero or a Kevin Durant, and they'll shoot for you. So I think, me personally, that is the best case scenario for Russell Westbrook. So now let's move on to section 2, which is all about the NHL. So, of course, like I mentioned before, we are in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals. So let's give a quick recap as to what has been happening so far. So Game 3 was last Monday, and the Florida Panthers came in with a purpose. They absolutely dominated this game, winning 6-1 and thereby leading the series 2-1. And who helped the Florida Panthers dominate this game? Carter Verhaeghe, who had 1 goal, 1 assist. Sam Reinhart, who had 1 goal and 1 assist. And Sergei Bobrovsky, who had 32 total saves. And then we get to Game 4. And the Oilers, after being down 3-0, made a serious comeback. Won 5-4 in an overtime thriller and tied the series at 2 apiece. So, who helped the Oilers make this crazy comeback? Leon Draisaitl, who had 1 goal and 2 assists, and Matthew Catchup, who had 2 goals and 1 assist. So, like I mentioned before, the series is tied at 2 apiece. And let me tell you something. This final series has been nothing but entertaining so far. 3 of the 4 games were overtime thrillers. Okay, and these are 2 teams that battled it out in last year's Stanley Cup Finals. Now, I've already mentioned who I think was going to win and why in last week's episode, so you can go check that out. But what I will say, though, is that I think that my prediction of this being a 7-game series is slowly but surely coming to life. Like, I truly think so. Just the way that these games have been going, the way that both of these teams have been battling it out. So now moving away from the finals talk, let's talk about the end of the regular season awards that were just announced. Colorado Avalanche player Cale Makar won the Norris Trophy, which honors the top defenseman. He won over Vancouver Canucks player Quinn Hughes and Columbus Blue Jackets player Zach Werenski. Montreal Canadiens player Lane Hudson won the Calder Trophy, which awards the Rookie of the Year. He won this award over Calgary Flames player Dustin Wolf and San Jose Sharks player Macklin Celebrini. Winnipeg Jets player Connor Hellebuyck won the Hart Trophy, which honors the NHL's MVP. He won this over Tampa Bay Lightning player Nikita Kucherov and Edmonton Oilers player Leon Draisaitl. Connor also won the Vezina Trophy, which honors the top goaltender. He won this award over LA Kings player Darcy Kuemper and Tampa Bay Lightning player Andrei Vasilevsky. Florida Panthers forward Alexander Barkov won the Selke Trophy, which honors the top forward. He won this award over Tampa Bay Lightning player Anthony Cirelli and Florida Panthers player Sam Reinhart. Washington Capitals coach Spencer Carberry won the Jack Adams Award, which honors the Coach of the Year. He won this over Winnipeg Jets coach Scott Arniel and Montreal Canadiens coach Martin St. Louis. Tampa Bay Lightning player Nikita Kucherov won the Ted Lindsay Award, which awards the most outstanding player. He won this over Colorado Avalanche players Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. Columbus Blue Jackets player Sean Monahan won the Bill Masterton Award, which exemplifies someone who shows perseverance, dedication, and sportsmanship to the game of hockey. He won this over Minnesota Wild player Marc-Andre Fleury and Colorado Avalanche player Gabriel Landeskog. LA Kings player Anze Kopitar won the Lady Byng Award, which awards the player with the best sportsmanship. He won this over Vegas Golden Knights player Jack Eichel and Tampa Bay Lightning player Braden Point. So, of course, this was such a great regular season, and let's see who wins next season. Before we continue, please make sure to check out all my social media pages, my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook, my Snapchat, my X account, my Threads account are all at Ball Talk with Chanel. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss a single episode. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please be sure to hit the like button. Make sure you follow this page so you do not miss a single episode. Now, back to the episode. So now moving into the third section, let's talk about Major League Baseball. We are in the middle of the regular season, so let's talk about the rankings so far. So let's start first with the American League. The Detroit Tigers are first in the league with a 46-26 record. And then right underneath them, coming in second in the league, are the New York Yankees, who have a 42-26 record. And then right underneath the Yankees, coming in third in the league, are the Houston Astros, who have a 39-30 record. So those are the top teams that are in the American League. Let's talk about the teams that are in the bottom of the league. So we have the Baltimore Orioles, who have a 28-40 record. And then right underneath them, we have the Oakland A's, who have the 27-44 record. So that's everything going on with the American League as far as rankings. Now let's move on to the National League. The New York Mets are first in the league with a 45-25 record. And then right below them, coming in second in the league, are the Chicago Cubs, who have a 42-28 record. And then we have the San Francisco Giants, who are third in the league with a 41-29 record. So those are the top three teams that are in the National League. Let's talk about the teams that are in the bottom of the league. So first we have the Pittsburgh Pirates, who have a 29-43 record. And then right underneath them, we have the Miami Marlins, who have a 27-41 record. And then at the bottom of the National League, we have the Colorado Rockies with a 13-57 record. So we have some big games coming up this week, so maybe we'll see a little bit of a change up in the rankings coming soon. So moving away now from the rankings, let's talk about the latest injury report for two players who, ironically, happen to be playing for the same team. So first, I want to talk about designated hitter Giancarlo Stanton. Now, Stanton is expected to return this week after missing some time dealing with tendonitis in both elbows. Now, with the return of him, this would especially be such a big boost for the Yankees. And who would also make such a big boost for the Yankees is a healthy return for Jazz Chisholm Jr. Now, he should be coming back relatively soon, maybe within the next week or two, but he had to leave during Wednesday's game with a left groin tightness in the middle of the game. Now, unfortunately for Jazz, he has been dealing with some injuries since the season has started. He missed a month because he was dealing with a right oblique injury. And then on Tuesday, so the day before, he had to leave the game early with an apparent neck injury, which Fortunately, thank God, it was not severe. So, of course, the Yankees have taken him out after Wednesday's exit. They've taken him out altogether, and hopefully he will be back within the next week or two, fully healthy. You don't have to take him out in back-to-back games. So now moving into the very last section of this episode, let's talk about the UEFA Nations League, because the final, like I mentioned before, was nothing less than exciting. But before we talk about the final, let's talk about the semifinal matches and the match for third place. So starting first, let's talk about the semifinal match, and let's talk about the Portugal versus Germany match. Now, the first half of the match was a very back and forth with no goals scored. But then we get to the second half of the match, and this is where all the action happens. In the first 3 minutes of the second half, Germany defender Florian Wirtz scored not only the first goal of the match, but the first goal for Germany. And then Portugal player Francisco Conceição scored a goal to tie the match. And then 5 minutes later, Portugal player Cristiano Ronaldo scored a goal for Portugal to ultimately give them the lead and eventually give them the win. And so now this win marked the first time in 25 years that Portugal defeated Germany in the Nations League. And so now let's move on to the other semifinal match, which was between Spain and France. Now this match was also another match that was just very, very exciting to watch. In the 22nd minute of the match, Nico Williams scored the first goal of the match and the very first goal for Spain. And then 3 minutes later, Spain midfielder Mikel Merino scored another goal for Spain, giving Spain the 2-0 lead. And that ended the scoring for the first half of the match. And then we get into the second half of the match, which is where most of the action happened. Within 10 minutes of the second half, Spain forward Lamine Yamal scored a goal for Spain to give Spain the 3-0 lead. And then a minute later, Spain midfielder Pedri scored a goal to give Spain a 4-0 lead. And then in the 59th minute, France forward Kylian Mbappe scored a penalty kick to give France their first goal of the match, so therefore making the score 4-1 Spain. Then Lamine Yamal scored another goal for Spain, giving Spain the 5-1 lead. Then French player Ryan Cherki scored a goal to ultimately make the score 5-2 Spain. And then Spain defender Danny Vivian accidentally kicked the ball into his own goal and therefore made the score 5-3 Spain. And then Rondo Colomwani scored a goal in the 90-plus third minute to ultimately end the scoring for France and giving Spain ultimately the 5-4 win. So before we talk about the final, let's talk about the match for third place. So this is between Germany and France. Now the match was very much a back and forth match, and before the end of the half at the 45th minute, Kylian Mbappe scored the first goal of the match and the very first goal for France. Now we're going into the second half with France having a 1-0 lead. And again, it was very much back and forth. And then France midfielder Michael Olise scored a goal to give France the 2-0 lead and ultimately giving them the win. Now, during this entire match, Germany had possession of the ball for the majority of the match. And unfortunately, with their possession, they were just not able to capitalize on it. They were not able to score a goal whatsoever. And now let's go on to the final. The match between Spain and Portugal. And listen, this was a very exciting match from the start. Spain player Martín Zubimendi scored the first goal of the match and the first goal for Spain. And then 5 minutes later, Portugal player Nuno Mendes scored the first goal for Portugal. And then at the 45th minute, right before the end of the half, Spain player Mikel Oyarzabal scored a goal to give Spain the 2-1 lead. And now we go into the second half, and then it was a very much back and forth game until Portugal player Cristiano Ronaldo scored the goal to ultimately tie up the match and send the match into extra time. Now there were no goals scored during extra time, so the match ended up going into the penalties. Portugal ended up winning in the penalties 5-3, and fundamentally Portugal won the Nations League final. Now Cristiano Ronaldo gets to add yet another international trophy to his collection from his very long and very successful career. And something I want to bring up is that I've been seeing a lot on social media people talking about Lamine Yamal and talking about how he has lost to Cristiano Ronaldo, how he has been exposed, etc., etc. And what I want to say is, why are we comparing a 17-year-old kid, a 17-year-old kid who was just getting started in his professional soccer career, to a 40-year-old seasoned player who is considered one of the greatest players to ever play the sport? Why are we making this comparison? Yes, I get it. Is Lamine very competitive? Yes. Is he a bright star? Yes. But why are we trying to compare the two as if Lamine at this point should be better than Ronaldo? Like I mentioned before, Lamine is just getting started, okay? He has done so much in the last 2 seasons alone. You can already see the potential in this kid. And so there will be many more seasons in which Lamine will be able to take over for the Spanish national team, whether it is for the World Cup, for the Nations League, anything else like that. But to compare him to Ronaldo, I think is just nuts. Like, I think just trying to say that Ronaldo exposed him, yeah, of course he's going to expose him. Like, Lamine does not have a lot of experience playing professional soccer. So I don't understand why this is such an issue for people. I think Lamine is going to be great. I think we're going to see a future where Lamine is just going to be basically taking over soccer. I can really see that. And so I'm excited to see what the future ultimately holds for Lamine. So that is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Please be sure to tune in to the next episode next Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time so you can be all caught up on what's happening in sports. See you next week. Bye.